With us now is a familiar face. Bryan Hannegan is with EPRI, where he is Vice President of Environment and Generation. He is also a former Senior Energy Advisor to President George W. Bush, and he's joining us now from Stanford University in California. Bryan, as always, good to have you with us today.
Good morning, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk first of all about EPRI's major project in Wisconsin, Pleasant Prairie, a 1.7 megawatt plant. Chilled ammonia is the focus here. Why that technology, and why was this such a linchpin to get things started regarding these private partnerships for CCS research?
Yeah, the chilled ammonia solvent is one of the most promising technologies in terms of capturing the carbon dioxide from a conventional pulverized coal power plant, the majority of the coal plants here in the United States. This was a first step in the development of this technology, or should I say a continuing step. We had done some laboratory work with SRI here in the Bay Area and Alstom to see if this was a promising technology to reduce the energy penalty and the cost associated with CO2 capture. It looked good in the lab. We wanted to move it into the field. We put together a collaborative of 37 different utilities from around the country and some international partners to help support the work that Alstom and We Energies, the host of the power plant that this was situated at, we ran that project. We're coming to the end of the project now. The results have been pretty much spot on with what we had hoped for. A couple of issues that we're looking forward to working with as we move to long-term operations, but certainly carbon capture at the 90 percentile level in most cases. Very low ammonia slip into the atmosphere, so very minimal impact on the environment, and a reduction in the cost and the energy penalty associated with it. We're on target for scaling up now to a 20 megawatt pilot project at the Mountaineer facility, and we're looking forward to working with Alstom and AEP on that.
Well, let's talk about the results at Pleasant Prairie, Bryan, and I talked to Robert Hilton, who's in government affairs with Alstom earlier this week, and he was talking about the results and his unofficial interpretation. He's saying, quote now, "The pilot plant in Wisconsin has averaged, and this is over a lot of testing, 88.9% removal. So we've been able to do up to 93, 94. We're confident we can do 90% on average." And he adds, Bryan, the other thing is that the purity has exceeded our expectations, which you alluded to. It sounds like this was a raging success for EPRI and the partner groups in terms of reaching and in some cases exceeding the targets that you wanted to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We still have a lot of work left to do in terms of scaling the technology up to what one would consider a commercial scale. We, in fact, are continuing operations at the Pleasant Prairie site through the end of October. EPRI will at that point do a technical and economic workup of all the data that we've collected during our time there, but we expect that the results that Mr. Hilton cited will hold up and be robust, and we're hoping that those carry forward now as we scale up to the next phase.
Well, let's talk about that next phase, Bryan, and you mentioned this as well, the Mountaineer plant project in West Virginia. Alstom involved in that as well, as is AEP. This is a commercial scale, fully integrated, pulverized coal plant. A lot of qualifiers here, but this is the next step in the process that you started at Pleasant Prairie. What do expectations mean for you going into this?
Well, we're working with Alstom and AEP to now bring this technology to the next phase to scale up by roughly an order of magnitude from the 1.7 megawatt equivalent pilot at We Energies to a 20 megawatt equivalent in the first phase at Mountaineer, and then Alstom has plans to scale that up still further to 200 megawatts over time. We are looking now about whether the results that we saw at Pleasant Prairie actually hold up as we move up in scale. We want to see that cost and that energy penalty come down from 30% for a conventional amine solvent to something more in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%, which would improve the costs of CCS and make it available as a commercial option going forward. We also want to see some long-term operations. At We Energies, we ran about approximately 6,000 hours of operation there, or we'll have run 6,000 hours by the time that we're done. We want to get into some long-term sustained operations so that a 90% capture efficiency can be reached on an ongoing basis in an operational sense, the way that you would expect it in a fully functioning, full-scale commercial plant.
Bryan, I'd like to ask you about the preponderance now of all of these multi-partner groups, all of them private, who are getting together internationally on so many of these CCS projects. Is there an impetus for DOE funding here? Is this especially relevant for stimulus funding? I know that EPRI will be a participant at some point in the Mountaineer project, but this is one of several you have going on. Do you need that public funding to really grease the skids here?
Well, as you may know, Tyler, the AEP has publicly stated that they too are seeking funding through the Clean Coal Power Initiative, the Round 3 program. The Southern Company, another group that we're working with, is looking at similar funding opportunities for their pulverized coal carbon capture experiment. There are a number of different groups that are doing this, and frankly, there are a number of promising technologies that we think are deserving of government support. When you think of the capital costs associated with adding these on either to an existing unit or building a brand new unit in the case of, say, Duke Energy and their Edwardsport IGCC plant, which is another approach that we're looking at, you know, all of these need some capital infusion, and the markets right now are very leery of anything that isn't, you know, leaned out to the maximum given where the credit markets are, where the economy is. So I think government support is very opportune at this point, particularly for the incremental cost of bringing this technology to market for the first time.
I want to read a statement to you, Bryan, which supports what you just said. This is from Mike Morris, who is the AEP president and CEO, quoting now, "First movers like AEP who push the commercialization of technology will face higher costs than those who wait for others to act." And he goes on to say, "It's an appropriate use of federal stimulus funds to spur the advancement of this technology and to offset the financial penalty for taking the initiative." If these private partnerships are so essential to driving this technology, Bryan, where does this leave FutureGen, which is, at least in theory, a joint public-private partnership, not just a grant, but a partnership?
Right. Well, Tyler, at all levels, once the CCPI funding comes in or funding from the stimulus package, you know, those partnerships, which are primarily private, do become public-private partnerships themselves when the government funding is added in. And so in that respect, they become themselves very much like FutureGen. And so we can think of not just one FutureGen project, but several different FutureGen type projects going on around the country, looking at different coals, different regions, different technology approaches, even something as fundamental between pulverized coal, gasification, and oxy-fuel combustion, all of which are promising technologies we think need to be demonstrated because we're not really sure which one of them, if one, it may be several, which of those options are going to be ready for commercialization in a time frame that we need to address climate change. So our view is these are all good horses in the race, and we need to be encouraging and placing bets on all of them because we don't know which one's going to win.
Well, given your history in the Bush White House, Bryan, and the White House's history with FutureGen, is this Mattoon, Illinois project still relevant in the international discussion, given how many groups have gone further, faster on developing commercial-scale CCS technology?
Well, to be frank, Tyler, I don't think that it's fair to say that all of the groups have gone faster than FutureGen. FutureGen was always about doing something at a 275 megawatt scale. It was doing a far more advanced experiment, far more advanced demonstration than some of the work that we've been engaged in, bringing in new elements like a syngas made up primarily of hydrogen, new turbine designs that would be capable of firing that syngas to create the power. New approaches to coal gasification. So what they've done is sort of staked out a far-reaching objective, and they've spent a lot of time trying to put that together. They've done the environmental analysis, the site characterization. They've moved much further in their NEPA-related work than a lot of the commensurate scale projects might have done at this point. So I think it's fair to say that they've taken one path. AEP and Alstom have taken another path. Southern, Duke, others have taken paths that make sense for them, and all of them are hopefully going to result in a series of options that the American power industry can use to help mitigate the impacts of climate change.
Bryan, final question, whether it is this year or in the next few years, we are clearly facing a carbon-constrained future here in the U.S. Regarding that, comments have come, very public comments from Philippe Joubert with Alstom, Jim Rogers from Duke, essentially predicting or mandating commercially viable CCS by a specific date, and they both have said 2015. Is that within reach in terms of what your expectations are at EPRI?
Well, certainly if the validation facility at the Mountaineer project goes as planned, I think 2015 is a definite possibility on the capture side. The real question will be, do we have the capability to really understand, monitor, verify storage of CO2 at the kinds of scales that we're talking about, 1 million tons or more per year per plant? If we're comfortable with the storage side of the equation on that same time scale, then 2015 is certainly an option. At this point, we're looking to the regional sequestration partnerships that DOE is supporting, the various pilot projects that you and I have discussed this morning. All of those seem to be moving more towards a 2020 timeframe. That being said, we'd be delighted if there was an option on the table in 2015. That would give us 5 more years to start addressing the issue of climate change.
Bryan Hannegan is Vice President for Environment and Generation at EPRI. And Bryan, it is always good to have you with us. Thanks for taking time today.
Thank you, Tyler. We'll see you soon.